In this last video of the Pong game, we're going to look at actually having an option to finish the game, or let's say restart the game as well. So if I first of all just run the game, you see what happens. What happens at the minute is that you play, the points go up, and the ball gets faster, of course, as well. But it never ends, right? So there isn't a point where you say get 10 points or 20 points or anything, and that the game actually ends ever. So what we want to do is start to think about that and how we could actually do it. Well, in order to do it, as you can see, our program at the minute hasn't got any sort of real, all this part anyway, isn't all contained within sort of a function that we can then call it. So you can see the way we've got this paddle up and paddle left. These are these functions which we can call, and we're doing that with this on press, these keyboard bindings. So if I press W or S, that will do up or down for the left paddle, and up and down for the right paddle. It calls these to happen, okay? But what we want to do is basically call all the code to happen except for the top bit, which would be the import turtle. So what I'm going to do is at the very top, just write def main. Okay, so this is kind of like, main is quite often used as the main program, right? Which is basically all of this. And in fact, when you run Python, it is considered, all of your code is considered the main, like a main sort of program anyway. So what I'm going to do now is that, as you can see, everything underneath needs to be indented in. So I essentially just select everything, the whole lot, and I'm just going to do control, well, it's command and the right square bracket, or control and the right square bracket, or I can press tab key. So there's a few options there. So I've just pressed tab, and as you can see, that's now indented the whole lot in. Okay, now of course some of the code here is further indented because it's in this loop. Okay, so now I've got this main that all my code is in. If I run my program, of course, it's not going to do anything, right? You can see it's not doing anything unless I write main. And I write main and it starts the program. Okay, so obviously we want this to start automatically. Now there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Usually at the bottom of your code, what you would write, just on the left hand side, you would write main, open and close brackets. But there is an alternative way that we can do this, and we can write, this is a common way to do it, where you would write underscore underscore. So if name is equal to underscore underscore main, like this, then we want to run main, right? So this is basically just saying, if the name of the main program or is equal to that, is equal to main, then we want to run whatever. Okay, now we've just called this main as well. We could call this game, for example, and essentially just means then the main program. So if I've called it game instead and run it, it's going to work, right? And there you can see it's running. Okay, so by doing this, by putting all of this inside, let's say I've called it game like this, by putting it all in game, it means I can now call it to be run. But that also means that I can actually call it again and again and again whenever I want. So this point here will mean that the game gets run the first time when I run my code. So every time I start this game, it'll run, but then I want to start thinking about rerunning it over again. Okay, so starting it up afterwards. Now, the first thing we will need to think about is how to get the game to stop. So here we've got a while loop. Okay, so you understand, hopefully, while loops, that all of this code here, all the way down to this point, is all inside my while loop. So what this means is that this code gets looped over and over and over again. And that's how this ball moves, because what we're doing, we're setting the X position and the Y position to whatever position it's at plus ball.dx. Ball.dx was a number. So essentially we're moving the ball forward on the x and the y position. And this is happening over and over and over and over and over again. So that's why you can see that that moves, right? And the same applies with pretty much all of this. We're always checking these if statements. We're just checking them all the time. Is the ball at whatever position? If it is, then do something. If it isn't, then don't do that and do something else, right? And check a different position. So we're always doing these things, everything within this while loop. Now at the minute, the while loop, we will want to break out of that while loop. So at the minute, we've just said while true. So instead of doing while true, we might want to actually have a boolean in here. So we'll create a variable, maybe call it play. So that variable, what we can do is we can just put it up at the top here along beside score, and we'll call it play equals true. And then of course we can change play to equal false so that it will stop the game when I get to the end of the game. So instead here, what I want to say, instead of while just while true, I'm going to say while play, right? So while play, and while when I write while play is equal to true. So this is kind of saying while play is equal to true. You could write it like this: while play is equal to true, but this is kind of like a short form. So this is assuming while play is equal to true. Do all of this code, and you can see we've got the window update, move the ball, check all of these, whether the ball is in a certain position, right? So if it's hitting off the top, hitting off the left and right, hitting off the paddle, right? So now we're saying while play. Okay, so that's great. But once we've done that, we now need to check the score. So the score begins at 0-0 for player A and player B. And you can see I've got score A and score B. So down here, within this, I want to, of course, within this loop, I want to be constantly checking the score. So we just do another if statement, right? So I'm just going to say if, and I've got score A is equal to, and you can choose what the how long the game lasts for. I'm going to just put 10. So if score A is equal to 10, what I want to do is change play to equal to false. So that means if score A is equal to 10, this while loop will stop, right? Because I'm changing play to equal false, so this will stop, okay? So what we can now do is obviously we want to then go in to test that. Now, before we finish up on that, obviously what we need to do is put all of this in the else of this if statement. So underneath, I'm just going to write else, and then I'm going to take all the code that's below that, except for the very last couple of lines there, and I'm just going to then press tab again so that sorry, I didn't press it, tab, so that it's inside of my else, and you can see that it's now further indented again. All right, so I've got if score is equal to 10, change play to false, which means that it'll essentially stop doing all of this, right? It'll stop doing everything. But if it's not equal to 10, then it's going to do this, right? And it's going to update my window, change the ball position on set X and Y, and then ask these questions. Okay, so we'll try this by changing score A. Instead of waiting for it to get to 10, I'm just going to go up to the top and change A to 9. So when it reaches 10, the ball only has to go on one time. So here you can see at the minute, right? So it went over, player A ended up with 10 points. So that meant that everything stopped. And you can see it stopped, right? And even if I press the arrow keys, everything is completely stopped. So that's good that works. We know that works. So I can change score back to 0. And we essentially, assuming that it works fine, what we'll do is then just do added elif. So elif, and we just do score B is equal to 10, right? Because it is either of those that we want to do that as well. So we'll say play equals false again, right? So we're doing it for player A equals 10 and score B equals to 10. Now the next thing that we will want to think about doing for this would be to have some sort of message box come up to ask us whether we want to play again, so to restart the game, right? So you want to be able to restart and play the game or not. Okay, now to do this, of course, we might want to import tkinter. So at the minute, we've only imported the turtle to do turtle graphics. So what we'll do, we'll say from tkinter, or we could just do it as import tkinter. We'll leave it like that. Okay, so we can see all of the stuff and how it works, what comes from the tkinter module. Right, so now we've imported tkinter, the module, we can now use it in our code. So where do we start using it? Well, what we want to do is we want to actually create some sort of message box. So I'm going to create a function that we can execute. So this one will be called def, let's say message box, and you can see I'm putting it inside of my main program, right? So the game. You see I've got functions here which are also inside of game, so this one's going to be inside of game too. Okay, but I'm not putting it within the loop, and the reason I don't want to put it in the loop is because I don't want it to appear all the time, right? I don't want it to repetitively appear. Okay, so I can put a comment directly underneath, just saying creates a message box to restart or close the game. Okay, now inside of this we will have two options within this, and those two options would be to either restart or to close it. Okay, so the first thing what we want to do is we want to just create a message box. We'll do that and we'll call it message. So we have to give it a name, and this is usually what we did before, we called it window. You could call it window, but I'm just going to call it message. And we would write capital TK and open and close brackets, but because of the way we imported, we just did import tkinter, you have to write tkinter dot, and this is the function that creates that window. Okay, so now to invoke this message box to happen, we need to run it. Okay, so down here, when player A, after that we want to write message box, open and close brackets. So we want to run it to get it to happen. So I'm going to copy that and put it down here as well. So that means I've got it here and here, right? So if score A is equal to 10, then we will stop this while loop and then run this message box, which basically creates just a tkinter window. Okay, so we can try this. I'm again actually going to change score to 9. I'll probably just leave it score A to 9 for the moment while we're testing all of this all the time, and then change it to 0 at the end. Right, so if I just let the ball go to the edge, right, so now I've got my tkinter box comes up. Now you can notice, of course, that the tkinter box came up just sort of, not necessarily randomly on the screen, but it comes up sort of on this side. Right, now I might want it to come up centered. Now, conveniently for me, the Pong game does seem to come up centered on the screen, but maybe we want this to like appear something like there instead. Okay, so what we can do is think about how to do that afterwards. So here in our message box, we've got that to appear. What we'll want to do is just change a couple of the settings. So we can put a title in there. So we'll say message.title. And in here, you can just ask the question, do you want to play again? Play again, something like that. And I might want to change the color of the box, right? So the background color, and that would be .config. You can do .configure, you can do .configure. And in here, you just put BG, right, for the background color. And you've got the choice. You can actually write black, red, orange, and so on. or you can use the hexadecimal color codes if you want to use a specific color. So I'm just going to write black because that is like what my window is. You can see that the hexadecimal color code, I have used it several times here where you can see I'm using this one or this one. So this one is my black. So I could use that instead, but you can actually write black. But if you've done your game differently, where the game has like some sort of specific blue color or shade of black or whatever, it won't, you will need to use a hexadecimal color code. Now you can see there it is, it's just come up like this, right? So now I've got a little black window here, which is nice, right? And oh, the other thing, you can see that the title comes up as well in it. So there it'll come up and it says play again at the top, right? So it does that. Now the next thing we'll want to do is, of course, create some sort of label that will tell you who the winner is, let's say. And we also maybe want to have a couple of buttons in there. So under here, I'm just gonna write label, right? So I don't need to actually put label in a sort of identifier. I don't need to give it identifier because I don't need to change it in any way. I just need to display it once. So we do the label, and instead of placing it, usually you can do dot place and place it in a specific position, or you can do dot grid and put it in a specific position. I'm just going to do dot pack for that one. Okay, so where do I want the label? I want the label to go in my message. Oops, in my message box. So I'm going to just copy the word message. So label goes in the message box, and then I just say text, what text I want, like so. And the other thing I might want is like foreground and background color. So the foreground color of the text, I want it to be white, right? So you can see it. And then the background color of the label wants to be black, right? So BG equals, and then you can do black, or you can do the hexadecimal color code, right? So I'm just showing you the combination of these things that you can actually see the difference between the two, right? So you see I've got black here, and this is black as well, and this is white, right? So it's quite often it's just easier if you're doing very easy colors to work with. You can do it like so. All right, now the text that we want to put in here will depend on who's won, because you want to say like player A1 or player B1, right? So here what we will do is actually we'll put an argument in here. So what we will do is we'll say that this message box, this function called message box, needs a parameter in here. And what we could say, we could just call it winner, right? So this is a bit like a variable. And what we're going to do is that anytime you run or call message box, it needs to have one argument, which is winner. Okay, so down here in message box, if this happens, what's going to say, if we run it, you'll see what happens at the minute. It'll come up. You see the tkinter box didn't appear this time, and look, it says message box missing one required positional argument, winner, right? So that means that we have to actually put something inside of these brackets, inside message box, because we've written this winner here, right? So this is like a variable, so we're going to pass some information into that. So for both message boxes that we're running or calling, this is if player A wins, and this is if player B wins, right? So you can put in quotes, and I'm just going to write player A wins, or won, whatever you want to say, player A won, and then copy and paste it and just change that to player B. Okay, so if I run it now, I program, and player A will win. Right, so the tkinter box comes up again. It's fine, but it doesn't say anything about player A winning or not. And here you can see that label, it says label is not, okay, label is not defined, right, because I didn't write tkinter on front of it, right? So tkinter dot tkinter dot label. Okay, so if I try it again, and Boom. Okay, so it's come up and you can see that the box is now resized and become a lot smaller because of the fact that the label has nothing in it, essentially. So close that down. Inside of the text now, instead of the quotes, what I'm going to do is put winner. So this winner here, and this will be player A wins or player B wins. Okay, so if we run it, we can also change the size of the box. So it's going to resize to whatever size. There you can see, so it says player A wins, and that's true because player A got 10 points here, so player A wins. We'll change the size, the width and height of the box when we add a bit more into it. So after doing that label, we probably want a couple of buttons then that you can choose to do. So we're going to do a tkinter.button. And we'll do .pack. I'm just going to write all the specific things that you might want for this button, and then we'll copy it. So tkinter.button, it's going in the message box, and then we're going to have, let's say, with text equals yes, and I want to change the width of the button to be equal to 10, and that's it so far. We do have to give the buttons commands, but we'll do that afterwards. So I'm going to just copy that button and just change text to no. And that's it, right? So leave a space there. Okay, so now I've got a label and two buttons. Just run this again, see if that works. There you go, right? So player A wins, and I've got two buttons here. Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing what we want to do is think about getting these buttons to actually do something, because at the minute they don't do anything, right? And that's because we haven't given them a command. So what you want to do is run another little function, and we can create functions within functions. As you can see, this message box is inside of our main program or game, and we've got all these paddle up, paddle down things. That's all inside a game as well. So we're going to create some more functions that are inside our message box. So we've got to have these two buttons have two actions. So the first thing would be to do a restart one. So restart, and we would also, so what we'll do with the restart, we want to destroy this message, like get rid of it, and then rerun the game. So we'll say message.destroy, like that, to destroy the message, and then run the game again. So game was called game, right? So we can just run that. So we'll write game there. And then we're pretty much going to do the same thing, but for closing the program. So I'm going to call this close, and it is message.destroy again. In actual fact, if I just put close, it'll probably just close it. It's only message.destroy is only really needed for restart, I think, anyway. But then here you can just do exit. Okay, so this will like exit our program from running. Now, the buttons need to be given an extra bit of code to actually run, restart, or close. Okay, so see the way these are indented inside of our message box? That's why I'm doing this. So in the first button it says yes, so that would be yes, you do want to play again. I'll do command equals, and then just write restart. And then for this one, comma, command equals close. Notice I didn't put any brackets. Usually whenever you're running a function, you write like that, the full thing, you write the full name of it. But whenever in tkinter, you just actually put the name of them without the brackets on the end. So let's have a go and see if this will work. Hopefully this will. So restart the game, bam, comes up, yes, no. If I'm going to press yes this time. Okay, so I'm pressing yes, and look what's happening. I'm getting like some sort of duplicates here, and look what's happened. You can see it, right? So I'm getting this problem. Now this problem is related to the fact that we didn't clear the screen of the turtle graphics. So every time I rerun the game, it's creating another instance of all our turtle graphics. So at the top, I'm going to, underneath play, I'm going to write turtle And there's a simple command, basically clear screen. Clear screen, open and close brackets, right? So it's going to clear the screen before it then creates everything else again. So it's going to create another version of this. Every time I rerun game, it clears that screen first and then redoes all of that. Okay, so that was just that one line of there, clear screen. Okay, so that's important we do that. And let's have another go, see if this works now. And we only did the yes button to test it. So game over, press yes. Okay, so if I move the paddle and everything, press yes, right, and it resets the paddle and everything to the original place. Okay, so that works like that, that's perfect, and if I press no, it exits the game. Okay, perfect, that's brilliant. So the last thing that you might want to try to do would be to just like put this in the center. Okay, so it was this message box, we wanted to center it up. Now to do that, what we actually need to do is something a bit more complicated. It is simple mathematics really, right? So I'm going to just comment some of this stuff first. So here we'll just say create message box window, and here are our message box widgets, we call these, right? So you know, this label, button, and these buttons, they're widgets. And then in underneath here, what I'm going to just do is some extra code. Now you might remember that we can write message dot geometry. If you remember from doing this before, we can do geometry and we can say the window size. But what we actually want to do is we want to find the window size, but we also want to position it. So in order to do that really well in Python is that you kind of need to know what your window size is. So on my MacBook, for example, if I look at displays, I can see I've got 2560 pixels on this display by 1600, right? So that I need to be able to basically get this number. Now, on each computer, your resolution, you would call this the resolution, the number of pixels width by height. And each computer is going to be different. But in tkinter, we have a way of getting that information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of variables. I'm going to do W for width, and I'm going to put maybe 220, and the height, I just want to put something like 80 for the size of the window that I'm going to put in here. But I then need to get the window size and the height size, and then I'm going to work out the X and Y coordinates from that. So it's simple mathematics, but you'll see when we do it, right? So window size, we need to get message dot winfo underscore screen width, like that, and then we do so that's the width size, and the height size will be message dot win info winfo screen heights. So now I've got those. Okay, so if you did, for example, if we just print one of those, right? So print WS, let's have a look at what we get in the shell. So when it won't pop up straight away, it'll pop up when we run, when it goes there, right? So there you see it's got 1280, okay, that it's coming up with that. Okay, so I'm going to take out that, and now I want to do the X and Y. So X, I'm going to do WS divided by 2 subtracted by W divided by 2. Okay, and the Y will be HS divided by 2 minus height divided by 2. And then what we can do is use this geometry. Now with the geometry, what we need to do will be to put the width, the height, and the x and y. So we need to have the width, the height, the x, and the y inside of this, right? So here we're using WS and WS and HS in here, but we need to use the width and the height in our geometry bit, okay? And the x and the y. So these are variables, so we can't just, usually what you would do is you would just put in, say, things like this. You do 600 by 400 or something like that, but we can't do that exactly. So what we need to do is we need to put the variables inside this string. So in order to do that, there is a couple of different ways we can do it. So we can do it like this, where we do percentage sign D, and then say that by, so this will be the width by percentage sign D again, right? So it's width by height, and we're going to then put over here, we'll say width by height, and then we want the x and y. So I'm going to put x and y over here, but so this variable here is going to go into this bit, essentially this part of the string, and then the x is like a multiplied, so 600 by 400, or whatever the width and the height, so 220 by 80 in this case. And then I need to do plus the x and y coordinates. So it's the percentage sign D plus percentage sign D. Okay? Don't worry too much if this seems a little bit confusing, but what we're doing, as I say, is we're putting these variables inside of this string, because basically geometry, when we use this geometry method, we do need to use a string. So I've got my open brackets here, close brackets there, but I've opened a bracket here, so I need to close a bracket here as well. Okay, so we've got double brackets done. Right, let's see if this works. So, bam, there you go. Right, so it's come up in the center, and that looks pretty good. The window size, I'm happy with that. You could make it bigger or smaller if you want. And we've got a title up there, and then it says player A is 1, which obviously you have, right, at 10 points. And yes or no, if I say yes, it starts the game. It's reset it to 0, of course, as well. And I say no, and it closes. So now that's finished. That's basically all the code there. So we did quite a bit today, just to go over this. It did take a little bit of time to actually, we did this if statement here, right? So we did all of that. We put everything inside of this game so we could run it over again, and we also did this extra bit to run the game at the beginning of our, oh, got something in there I've written accidentally, and the main part of these def message box, right? So we did this little bit of tkinter stuff, and you can see the way I did the import, so you can see these functions that we're using from tkinter. So this creates a label and the button, and they come from the tkinter module there.